The winter of 1865 in the mountains of Wyoming was a fierce beast, one that showed no mercy to those brave or foolish enough to defy it. The winds screamed as they swept across the snow-laden landscape, carrying with them the icy whispers of nature's unyielding power. Nathan, a cowboy carved out of the very rock and dust of the region, squinted against the biting wind. His trusty horse, Midnight, trudged through the accumulating drifts, steam billowing from its nostrils like a living locomotive. Nathan was not just a cowboy, he was a lifeline, a link to the world beyond the white wilderness. As a mail carrier, he bore the solemn responsibility of connecting the isolated souls scattered across these vast letters of love, news from home, parcels of promised joy, all rested in the leather satchel secured to his saddle. As the morning matured into afternoon, the storm intensified. The sky, a dull gray, collapsed into a swirling chaos of snow that began to obscure the very ground Nathan trod upon. He urged Midnight forward, the horse's hooves laboring under the growing burden of winter's wrath. Each step was a testament to their tenacity. The wind carried more than just snow. It carried the haunting song of the desolate and forgotten. There was no sound of birds or rustling leaves, only the relentless, howling gale. As Nathan pressed on, he became ever more aware of the precariousness of his situation. The landmarks that had guided him were now obscured, hidden beneath a blanket of white that was ceaselessly thickening. It was then, through the haze of the storm, that Nathan perceived a faint and flickering promise of salvation. A light, nearly swallowed by the storm, yet persistent. He altered his course towards it, spurred by a primal urge to seek shelter from the merciless elements that surrounded him. As they drew closer, the light resolved into the outline of an abandoned train station, a haunting relic on the desolate landscape. Its windows, glazed with ice, gleamed faintly against the encroaching night. Snow mounded in drifts against the sagging platform, and the rails stretched away like ribs of a great, slumbering beast. Nathan dismounted, his boots crunching through the crusted snow, and led Midnight to the lee side of the building, where the wind was less ferocious. There was no stable, but a makeshift lean-to offered enough protection for the exhausted animal. Nathan stroked Midnight's neck, whispered words of reassurance, and fed him an apple from his sack, saving the horse's sore need for warmth and care for the next stop on their journey. With a final glance at the storm-clouded sky, Nathan pushed his way into the train station. The door creaked as if waking from a long-forgotten dream, announcing his presence with protest. Inside, the air was bitter and stagnant, the chill a living thing that clung to every surface. It was then that his eyes landed on a woman and a child, huddled near the embers of a dying fire. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting Nathan's with a mixture of surprise and guarded hope. Her face, framed by loose strands of hair escaping from beneath a bonnet, bore the lines of care and waiting. The little boy at her side clung to her skirt, his wide eyes reflecting the flickering flames, innocent and full of questions. "Evening," Nathan greeted, his voice carrying the calm assurance of someone accustomed to the unexpected. "Evening," she replied, her voice soft like the snow outside, yet etched with strength. Nathan approached cautiously, extending his hands towards the fire. The warmth, though feeble, was a welcome balm against the cold that had seeped into his bones. "Name's Nathan. I was caught in the storm. Didn't expect to find anyone here." "I'm Isobel," she responded, a weary smile gracing her lips. "And this is my son, Tommy." Nathan nodded, offering Tommy a gentle smile, which the boy shyly returned. He turned his attention to Isobel, noting the way her eyes flickered anxiously to the door, as if expecting it to open and deliver the one for whom she waited. The air was thick with unasked questions and untold stories. The station, Nathan realized, was not just a shelter for the storms, it was a refuge for the heartbroken, a place suspended in time where hope hovered on the edge of despair. Keeping his curiosity at bay, Nathan settled onto an old, creaky bench, offering his presence in silence as the wind continued its mournful lament outside. In that space of solitude, shared among strangers bound by the storm, Nathan knew that his journey had brought him here for more than just refuge. And as the night deepened around them, he could not shake the feeling that fate had woven their paths into the same tapestry on this stormy winter's night. The wind howled like a chorus of wolves as Nathan staggered through the knee-deep snow, his horse struggling beside him. The blizzard enveloped everything in a swirling, blinding white, turning the familiar rugged landscape into an alien world. Every step was a battle, but Nathan pushed on, driven by a duty that transcended the elements. The mail must go through, come hell or high water, or in this case, a tormenting storm. Then, in the smothering dark of snow and night, a faint flicker of light beckoned him forward. It was a beacon, a fragile sign of warmth and safety in the treacherous winter wilderness. As he drew closer, he recognized the silhouette of an old train station, abandoned by time and tucked away from the world. Shaking the snow from his hat and coat, Nathan approached the station. Its paint was peeling, and the windows rattled with the force of the storm. Yet, to his surprise, the light persisted, spilling from a window and pooling onto the snow like a promise. Hope quickened his steps. Inside, the station was a haven of quiet, the walls thick enough to keep the storm's roar at bay. The warmth, though faint, was a balm against the bitter cold. Nathan paused at the threshold, his eyes adjusting to the dim interior. It was then he noticed the inhabitants, a woman and a child. They were huddled by a modest fire that seemed to breathe in the room's stillness. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his, with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Her face was pale but striking, framed by dark hair that caught the firelight and held it. Beside her, the boy clutched a woven blanket, his eyes wide and solemn, watching Nathan with an inquisitiveness that surpassed fear. Nathan removed his hat, shaking more snow from its brim. "Evening, ma'am," he greeted quietly, his voice barely louder than the flames. "Apologies for just looking for shelter till the storm lets up." She nodded, motioning for him to come closer. "It's a terrible night to be out. You're welcome to stay until it passes," she offered, her voice carrying the calm reserve of someone accustomed to hardship. Nathan stepped forward, grateful for the invitation. He could feel the warmth beginning to seep through his frozen layers, loosening the grip of the cold. "Name's Nathan. I'm the mail rider for this area," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Isobel," she replied, meeting his grasp with a firm shake. "And this is my son, Tommy." The boy gave a small, cautious wave, his eyes flickering between Nathan and his mother. As he settled by the fire, Nathan took in his surroundings. The station, though small, was orderly, its benches cleared, and a few personal items set near the fire. The remnants of a home in a place long forgotten. There was a melancholy beauty in its simplicity, a quiet strength that seemed to mirror the woman before him. "Strange place to be waiting," Nathan commented gently, noticing the bare shelves and dust-laden surfaces. His words were careful, probing yet respectful. Isobel smiled faintly, a shadow crossing her features. "It's not much, but it's safe. We came here after the war started," she explained, her gaze drifting to the window as if searching for something or someone across the white abyss. Nathan nodded, understanding more than was said. The war had taken much from many, leaving behind empty homes and aching hearts. "Waiting for someone special?" he asked softly, though he already sensed the answer. "Yes," Isobel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My husband went off to fight. We haven't heard from him in a long while." Nathan's heart tightened at the weight of her words, the familiar pang of loss echoing in the silence that followed. He had seen too many families torn asunder, too many lives cut short by the endless conflicts. As if sensing the gravity of their conversation, Tommy moved closer to his mother, instinctively seeking comfort. Isobel wrapped an arm around him, holding him close as if he were the anchor keeping her grounded amidst the uncertainty. The fire crackled, casting its warmth across their faces, and Nathan felt a profound sense of intrusion into their fragile world. "I'm sorry," he murmured, unsure what else to say in the face of such enduring sorrow. Isobel shook her head, offering a brave smile. "It's all right. We hold on to hope. Sometimes that's all we have." Her words lingered in the air, a testament to the human spirit's resilience. Nathan marveled at her strength, the quiet courage that held her and her son together as they waited for a future unknown. For a while, they lapsed into a comfortable silence, each tethered to their own thoughts, their own stories. Outside, the storm continued its relentless assault, but inside, the world was suspended in a kind of peace, an interlude of connection amidst the chaos. By the time the fatigue of his journey caught up with him, Nathan found himself lulled by the fire's warmth, the exhaustion of battling the elements finally taking its toll. Isobel had laid out a spare blanket for him, and he accepted it gratefully. As he drifted into a fitful sleep, the last thing he saw was Isobel, her eyes closed, her head resting against Tommy's. The boy, still awake, watched the flames dance, his gaze bright and filled with dreams unspoken. Nathan's last thought before sleep claimed him was that of hope, an ember, small yet unyielding, like the station's hearth against the storm. He vowed, silently, to carry it with him, to fan it gently into a flame that might yet light the way through the shadows for them all. With this encounter, the story builds its foundation, introducing elements that will continue to evolve as Nathan, Isobel, and Tommy face the truths and trials ahead, embodying the enduring nature of hope and human resilience in the face of life's storms. The storm outside grew fiercer, each gust of wind pounding against the deserted train station walls, as if trying to remind its inhabitants of their isolation. Inside, the dim light from the fireplace flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. Nathan, warmed slightly from the cold he had endured, looked around the station with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. His eyes settled on Isobel, who sat with a quiet strength, her son nestled against her side, his small face etched with innocence and confusion. The station had a haunting stillness about it, a shrine to the bygone days when it had bustled with travelers and life. Now, it stood as a sentinel of solitude, its silence only disturbed by the occasional crackling of the fire and the persistent howl of the storm outside. Nathan, seeking some task to ease his mind, began to survey the room more thoroughly. In a forgotten corner of the station, partially hidden beneath a pile of newspapers and old maps, Nathan spotted a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. As he picked them up, a particular envelope slid out, distinct with its yellowed paper and the unmistakable mark of age. Something about it compelled him to open it. The letter was a relic from a past neither kind nor gentle. It bore the cramped, elegant handwriting of someone desperate to convey a message of deep sorrow. Nathan's heart grew heavy as he read, understanding that this was the letter never meant to be hidden, yet somehow it had slipped through the aching hands of war and into his own. The content was stark missive from the battlefield, reporting the death of Isobel's husband. The words were sparse yet heavy, speaking of bravery and sacrifice, of a life ended before it could return to the life and love waiting for it here, in this forgotten corner of the world. Nathan felt his breath catch in his throat, caught between his need to do right by Isobel and her son, and the crushing weight of the truth he now held. To withhold this information was a kindness he couldn't justify, yet to share it shattered the fragile hope Isobel clung to. Each scenario played in his mind as his eyes returned to the lonely figure by the fire. With a resolve born from understanding the inevitable pain this truth would bring, Nathan approached Isobel. He began with his discovery of the letters, leading gently to the one he now held. He saw the shift in her expression from polite attention to dread as he explained what he had found. Isobel's eyes glistened with a mix of disbelief and denial. Her son, sensing the change in the room's atmosphere, clung tighter to his mother, the unspoken questions in his eyes stabbing Nathan with guilt. The boy, too young to understand the complexities but old enough to perceive the tone, watched as tears finally spilled down his mother's cheeks. Nathan sat with them, offering silent support as Isobel took the letter. Her fingers trembled as they traced the familiar writing. As she read, the room seemed to fall away, leaving Nathan in the periphery, a reluctant witness to her grief. He wished he could muster words of comfort, but they felt inadequate in the face of such raw sorrow. Time stretched, the storm outside echoing the whirlwind of emotions inside. Nathan could see Isobel grappling with the reality, the slow dawn of understanding that her husband would never return. He admired her strength, the way her tears, though unending, did not drown the willpower in her eyes. When the silence grew too overwhelming, Nathan finally spoke, his voice soft yet firm with conviction. He assured Isobel that she was not alone in this, that he would do whatever he could to help. He spoke of the future, cautiously at first, not to trivialize her loss, but to plant the seeds of hope amid the ashes of despair. The young boy, though still confused, seemed to draw strength from Nathan's words, visibly relaxing as he nested closer against his mother. Nathan knew that the journey of healing was just beginning, but he believed it was a path worth taking. In that small, desolate station, surrounded by the mighty storm, Nathan, Isobel, and her son found a moment of peace. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that, though shadowed by loss, was also illuminated by the promise of renewal. Nathan sat on a splintered wooden bench, the cold seeping through his layers of clothing. He watched the fire struggle against the chill, much like his own heart struggled against the weight of the truth he'd uncovered. Isobel sat across from him, her eyes distant and glazed. Her son, a boy of perhaps 4 or 5 years, huddled by her side, clutching a well-worn cloth bear. The boy's eyes, wide and full of questions he likely couldn't yet form, were fixed on Nathan. It was a gaze that seemed to pierce through to Nathan's soul. The letter lay between them, its yellowed edges curling upwards, as though resisting the news it bore. Nathan had found it stuffed in a crevice, hidden as though the station itself had conspired to keep it secret forever. He had hesitated before handing it over to Isobel, aware that the hope she clung to would be dashed to pieces by its contenser confirmation of her husband's death. The revelation had settled between them, heavier than any blanket of snow. Isobel had read it silently, her fingers trembling on the brittle paper. Her only reaction had been a single, shuddering breath before her gaze fell to the flickering fire. It was a gaze not so much resigned as exhausted, a weary acceptance of what she had perhaps always feared in her heart. The wind howled outside, its mournful cries echoing through the cracks and crevices of the long-abandoned station. It was a place suspended in time, where memories lingered like ghosts. Nathan felt their present specters of journeys begun and ended, of love found and lost. "I'm so sorry," Nathan finally said, his voice rough in the silence that blanketed them. He wished he could offer more than platitudes, more than sorrow. The words felt inadequate, though they were all he had. Isobel shook her head slowly, the movement almost imperceptible. "I knew," she murmured. "Some part of me knew. But holding on to hope, it was all I had." The boy shifted slightly, still clutching his toy, his gaze never leaving Nathan's face. Nathan forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a gesture simultaneously for Isobel and her child. "I don't have the power to change the past," he said gently, "but sometimes moving forward means letting go of what we thought might have been." Isobel's eyes met his, and in them, Nathan saw a flicker of understanding, perhaps even agreement. "I've been waiting for so long," she said, her voice as fragile as the paper she'd just read. "Waiting for him to walk through that door, but waiting has kept us frozen, kept me frozen." Nathan nodded. "You deserve more than waiting," he said, the conviction in his words lending them strength. "Both of you do." The boy leaned slightly against Isobel, finally breaking his gaze from Nathan to look up at his mother. It was a simple gesture, but one that contained immense complexity, a silent question, a need for reassurance in a world that, for him, had suddenly shifted, finding himself unexpectedly included in a profound moment of family. Nathan cleared his throat, trying to shift the focus from the gravity of their situation. "You know, I've traveled all over delivering mail," he started, his voice warming with the spark of a new idea, "and I've seen how people pick themselves up, find new paths, even when it seems nothing could ever grow again. Sometimes, when everything feels lost, that's when the best stories begin." He shared tales of towns rebuilding after losing everything, of families starting anew in the wake of tragedy. His words were crafted carefully, meant to plant seeds of inspiration rather than impose optimism. Isobel listened, her eyes on the fire, though Nathan could tell she was hearing him. The boy watched in silence, absorbing stories like bedtime tales, a narrative to challenge the bleak reality around them. Outside, the wind began to quiet, its fury spent. A stillness settled over the station, as if the world itself paused, waiting to see what would unfold within its weathered walls. Isobel let out a slow breath, one that seemed to release more than just air. "I want to believe in those stories," she admitted softly. "I want him to know there's more to life than waiting for ghosts." The boy leaned into his mother's side, the trust of a child enfolded in that simple action. Nathan felt a surge of hope in his chest, a tentative, fragile thing. "And he will," Nathan assured her. "You both will." As the fire flickered its last, leaving the room dimmer but for the creeping light of dawn, Nathan felt the atmosphere shift. Isobel lifted her head, her eyes meeting his with a quiet determination. "When the storm ends, we'll go," she said, her voice stronger now. "Find a new beginning." Nathan nodded, feeling a swell of something akin to pride. The storm had been fierce, but its end promised a new day, a new chapter. He knew he'd carried this moment with him, a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, of hope reborn in the face of despair. As day broke and the blizzard relented, Nathan prepared to continue his journey. He helped Isobel and her son gather the few belongings they had, a modest offering for the journey ahead. Though their paths diverged here, Nathan knew the encounter had left an indelible mark on all of them. Once outside, he turned to the station one last time. It silhouetted against the rising sun was no longer a monument to waiting but a portal to possibility. "Safe travels," Isobel called after him, her words carrying over the crisp snow-kissed air. Nathan touched the brim of his hat, a gesture of respect and farewell. "To you as well," he replied. With a final glance back, Nathan set off. The weight of the revelation he'd delivered lingered, but within it lay the promise of renewal. And as he rode into the unfolding dawn, Nathan carried with him the enduring hope of love and life reborn beyond loss. The wind howled less fiercely now, its voice a muted whisper compared to the roaring gale that had imprisoned Nathan within the confines of the abandoned train station. Outside, the snow continued its gentle descent, blanketing the world in a deceptive peace. Nathan sat by the dimming fireplace, the warmth from the dying embers a comforting embrace against the chill that lingered in the air. Opposite him sat Isobel, her eyes distant yet fixed on the flickering flames, and beside her, her son, his small body curled against her in quiet contemplation. The news Nathan had delivered hung heavy in the air, a revelation that had shattered the fragile hope Isobel had clung to amidst the silence of waiting. Her husband, lost to the ravages of war, would never return. The letter Nathan found, yellowed with age and hidden beneath forgotten memories, had finally spoken the truth, but Nathan refused to let that be the end of their story. "Isobel," Nathan began, his voice gentle yet firm, "I can't bring back what you've lost, but I can promise you that there's still a world beyond these walls waiting for you and your boy, a world where hope isn't just a distant dream, but something you can hold on to." Isobel glanced at him, her eyes searching for any hint of false hope or empty promises. She found none. "What is there for us out there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile calm that had settled around them. Nathan smiled softly, remembering the tales he had gathered over his years riding through the vast, unforgiving landscapes of the West. "There are towns where people still help one another, where communities gather to lift each other up. I've seen families rebuild from ruin, watched them find joy in the simplest of things." The boy, whose name Nathan learned was Samuel, looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Have you seen the ocean?" he asked, his voice filled with the innocence only a child could possess amidst such heartbreak. Nathan chuckled, a sound that seemed out of place, yet somehow perfectly fitting. "I have," he replied, "and it's as vast and endless as the stories about it. The sky meets the water in a way that makes you feel like you could reach out and touch the horizon." Isobel listened quietly, her heart torn between the despair of her present and the glimmer of her future. Her guest painted with such vivid strokes. The warmth of his words seeped into her soul, thawing the icy grip of grief that had held her captive for so long. "Do you really think we could leave here?" she asked, her voice gaining strength, coaxed by the vision of possibilities Nathan's stories had ignited. Nathan nodded, leaning forward, his eyes meeting hers with unwavering sincerity. "I believe wherever we are, we can choose to find light amid the darkness. The world may not be perfect, but it's waiting for you to shape your path in it. Your strength has kept you here, holding on to hope. It can also help you find a new direction." Silence fell between them, not the oppressive silence of before, but one filled with contemplation and unspoken dreams. Gradually, Isobel released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, a decision forming in her heart. "We could go?" she asked, turning to her son, seeking his assent. Samuel nodded eagerly, the prospect of new adventures bringing color back to his cheeks. "We could chase the ocean," he said with a conviction only a child entertained, as though it was the most obvious choice in the world. Isobel smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across her face as she looked back at Nathan. "Thank you," she said, the mere words unable to encapsulate the gratitude she felt. Nathan shook his head, rising with a sense of purpose that matched the newfound resolve he saw reflected in their eyes. "No need for thanks," he replied. "Just promise me one thing, that you'll keep believing in the promise of tomorrow, no matter how hard the days may seem." They talked through the night, Nathan sharing tales of resilience and renewal, each story a thread in the tapestry of hope he sought to weave for them. As the fire dimmed to glowing embers, they planned their journey. A journey not just toward a physical destination, but toward healing and rebirth. With dawn breaking the horizon, Nathan prepared to leave, the storm having lost its ferocious grip on the land. He packed his things, ensuring the letters he bore were securely stored for the next leg of his journey. Yet this time, he didn't leave behind just words written on paper. This time, he parted with a piece of his heart, one that had found a home in the small family within the station walls. Isobel and Samuel stood at the doorway, bundled in coats against the crisp morning air, their breaths swirling in visible clouds between them. They watched as Nathan mounted his horse, the powerful creature stamping impatiently against the fresh snow. "Until we meet again," Nathan called out, tipping his hat in farewell. "Until then," Isobel replied, clutching Samuel close, their figures framed by the soft glow of the rising sun. And as Nathan rode away, the station behind him transformed from a place of despair into one of profound promise. It stood as a reminder that even the harshest winter thawed in time, giving way to the bloom of new beginnings. In the unraveling of night's shadow, Nathan carried with him the knowledge that, while his path led him onward, he had left behind something invaluable, a renewed hope that would guide Isobel and Samuel toward their own horizons endlessly unfolding. As dawn gently broke over the snow-capped peaks of the Wyoming mountains, a serene calmness replaced the fury of the previous night's storm. The sky, once a blur of swirling snow and wind, now radiated a soft pink hue, heralding a new day. Nathan stood at the threshold of the old train station, gazing out at the freshly fallen snow that blanketed the landscape like a promise of purity and fresh starts. Inside, the station was slowly coming to life. The dim light of the early morning cast a warm, gentle glow across the worn wooden floor, which creaked slightly under Isobel's cautious steps. Her young son lay curled up near the now extinguished fireplace, wrapped in Nathan's coat for warmth. The boy's rhythmic breathing was a calming melody, a reminder of innocence and the dawning of hope. Nathan turned to Isobel, who was clutching the letter he had discovered the night before. Its weight seemed less burdensome in the early light. Nathan had agonized over whether to reveal the truth, but he had seen no other path. It had been a night of deep reflections and heart-to-heart conversations, under which the veil of unspoken fears had finally been lifted. They had shared stories, dreams, and even moments of laughter, bringing them closer in the face of shared sorrow. "I know it's been a difficult night, Isobel," Nathan began, his voice steady yet tender. "But today is a starter new beginning. We must hold on to the hope that things can and will be better." Isobel looked up at Nathan, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, yet alight with a flicker of something she had unfelt in a long time: hope. She nodded, understanding that Nathan's presence and his unyielding spirit were gifts in themselves. "I never thought I'd see the sunrise with a heart willing to heal," Isobel admitted. "You've shown us that there's more to life than waiting for ghosts to return." Nathan smiled softly. "Your strength and your son's laughter are reminders that life can renew itself, no matter how bleak it seems." He glanced at the boy, who was now stirring awake, his eyes fluttering open to meet the light. His innocent gaze met Nathan's, a silent inquiry in their depths. Nathan crouched beside him. "Good morning, young man. Today's a new day. How about we go outside and start making some new memories?" The boy nodded, shyly at first, then more eagerly as Nathan's enthusiasm proved contagious. Together, they stepped outside, taking in the sprawling white expanse that lay before them. Nathan showed him how to form snowballs, and before long, their laughter echoed across the station, filling the air with joy and warmth that banished the chill of lingering despair. Nathan paused to look back at Isobel, who now stood at the entrance, watching them with a soft smile. He waved to her to join them, and after a moment's hesitation, she stepped out into the blanket of snow. The crunch of frozen crystals under her feet was a symphony of change, a gentle reminder that every step forward was a step toward healing. The morning unfolded with simple joys, no angels sketched in the snow, the creation of a makeshift snowman, and the playful warmth of sunshine on their faces. As they engaged in the innocent delight of play, the invisible chains that had bound Isobel to unending grief began to break, one link at a time. But the morning also heralded Nathan's impending departure. The storm had cleared, and he knew he must continue on his journey to deliver the mail, a duty he held with a profound sense of purpose. He would soon leave behind this tiny sanctuary, where hope had rekindled in the hearts of a mother and her son. Inside the station once more, with bags packed and ready, Nathan walked over to Isobel. "I should be on my way," he said softly, regret tinging his voice. "But know that you both have been a beacon of light for me, too. Thank you for letting me share in your journey." Isobel nodded, understanding etched in her features. "Your kindness and stories gave me strength I didn't know I had," she replied earnestly. "The future suddenly seems less daunting, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Nathan turned to the boy and bent down to his level. "Take care of your mother, all right? You're a brave young man, and I know you'll do great things." The boy nodded solemnly, a silent promise exchanged between the two. With one last smile, Nathan stepped outside into the crisp morning air, a renewed spirit guiding his steps. He glanced back, seeing Isobel and her son framed in the doorway, a picture of hope personified. He lifted his hand in a final farewell, imprinting their image in his heart. Nathan began his trek once more, leaving behind the station a place no longer of waiting but of new beginnings. As he traversed the snow-dusted path, he carried with him the knowledge that he had helped spark change and hope where there had once been despair. His journey would continue, driven by a newfound understanding of the power of human connection and the undying resilience of the heart. The world lay before him, untouched and filled with possibilities. The mountains stood as silent guardians over the valley, and the freshly fallen snow sparkled with the promise of spring. Nathan's heart swelled with determination and hope, knowing that he would carry this experience forward, spreading inspiration and a reminder that love endures, even in the most unexpected places.